Fact 1. Born in 1940 in a small town in the state of Georgia, Little claims his teenage mother was a prostitute who left him by the side of the road as a baby. Looked after by his grandmother, he grew up in Ohio, where he started committing petty thefts in order to buy drink or drugs. While at primary school, he had a sexual fixation with the necks of females and dreamed of killing one of his classmates after she touched hers. Little, whose real surname was McDowell, was sent to a juvenile detention center for stealing a bicycle when he was a teenager. Fact 2. Little had a long criminal history in early adulthood. He was previously arrested for driving under the influence, fraud, shoplifting, solicitation, armed robbery, aggravated assault, and rape. During his time in prison for these crimes, he learned how to become a professional boxer. The serial killer used his psychopathic superficial charm to lure his victims into a false sense of security. He would go on a date with the women he had selected as victims, take them out to dinner first, and then he drove them both to a secluded alleyway or deserted side road. This location was his intended kill site. He used his boxing skills to knock his victims out cold with one punch, or place them in a choke hold before strangling them to death. Fact 3. Samuel Little selected female sex workers and drug addicts who were vulnerable as his intended victims, because he believed these deaths would go unnoticed. Little was able to avoid detection for almost 4 decades. He believed he would not be caught because he thought no one was accounting for his victims. He said, "I never killed senators or governors or fancy journalists. Nothing like that. It would be all over the news the next day. I stayed in the ghettos." Fact 4. Due to his photographic memory, which allows him to recall the faces of victims even decades later, Little has been able to assist in solving many of the cold cases connected to him. He is also able to remember, with great accuracy, where the exact location of each murder was and what car he was driving at the time. Little has sketched many portraits of his victims, and this has proved successful in identifying 2 women. The serial killer said, "The only things I was ever good at was drawing and fighting." Fact 5. After extraditing him from Kentucky to California on drugs charges, the Los Angeles Police Department noticed his DNA linked him to 3 unsolved murders in the city from the late 1990s. In September 2014, Little was found guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On the day of his verdict, he maintained his innocence and claimed that he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Fact 6. A Mississippi Sheriff's Department said in September 2021 that it has identified the skeletal remains of a woman found nearly 44 years ago, and investigators believe she was a victim of the now deceased Samuel Little, the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. Hunters found the woman's remains in December 1977 in coastal Jackson County, Mississippi. An autopsy determined that the woman, who had a distinctive gold tooth, had been dead about 3 or 4 months before her remains were found. Fact 7. The life of Samuel Little revolved solely around criminal activities. Even though he had an odd jobs, he had worked as a cemetery worker and an ambulance attendant. One of the most remarkable facts about Samuel Little is that he was hardly arrested for his nocturnal activities. Most of his arrests were for minor crimes such as shoplifting and burglaries. He was arrested frequently though because, by the time he was 35 in the year 1975, he had been arrested 26 times in 11 different states. Fact 8. The Los Angeles Police Department dubbed him the choke and stroke killer for his sexually motivated crimes. He would often strangle a woman while masturbating. An FBI database linked Little's crimes together. He maintained his innocence until 2018, when he began confessing to Texas Ranger James Holland and others. He confessed to killing 93 women from California to Florida between 1970 and 2005. Fact 9. 30 sketches of victims hand-drawn by Little himself have been compiled as part of a public database released by the FBI in the hopes that they will be able to close even more cold cases. The FBI are hoping that someone or a family member, former neighbor, friend might recognize the victim and provide that crucial clue in helping authorities make an identification. They want to give these women their names back and their families some long-awaited answers. Fact 10. It's not unusual for a serial killer to show no signs of remorse. However, Little actually referred to himself as an angel of mercy, as he believed God put me here to do this. During a series of disturbing interviews, he referred to his victims as my babies, and that killing felt like heaven. It felt like being in bed with Marilyn Monroe. Little was 80 years old when he passed away at a California hospital on December 30, 2020. Although there was no specific cause of death, Little suffered from diabetes, heart problems, and other health conditions.